Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. My name is Erin, and I am one of the career coaches at the Mary Gates Hall Career and Internship Center. I've done this presentation a few times this quarter, and so if this is your first time here, most likely it is, welcome. It's definitely a topic that's really important, something that's, near and dear to my heart, as something that I definitely experienced very strongly after graduating college. And I'm hopeful that, this can be helpful or comforting in some way to you. I am going to spend about the next 30 minutes presenting some slides, and then I'll do Q&A at the end. But if you have questions throughout, you can certainly put them in the Q&A box rather than the chat box. That would be awesome. I will either answer them on the spot or wait till the end if it makes more sense for me to do that. If you ever can't hear me or see the slides, please do let me know in the chat. And then what else here? I will be sending a follow-up email with a recording of the webinar and a copy of the slides if you have to leave early. So just look out for that. As long as you've registered for this event in Handshake, you'll get that. And then also, I think that closed captions are enabled. So if you want to turn them on your end, feel free, to do that and let me know if you're having any issues with that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and turn my screen off so we can focus on the slides. But let's go ahead and get started. So yes, today we're talking about managing career anxiety. I'll talk a little bit more about what that specifically means. But first, I want to start with a land acknowledgement to say that the University of Washington acknowledges the Coast Salish peoples of this land, the land which touches the shared waters of all tribes and bands within the Squamish, Puyallup, Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. And so you might have other classes or presentations or workshops that do land acknowledgements at the beginning. At the Career Center, we just think it's really important to reflect on the lands that we, live, work, play, go to school on as, the ancestral homelands and territories of Indigenous peoples. So thanks for taking time to acknowledge that with me today. Moving on to the agenda. So we're going to first, talk about what career anxiety is, how do we define it, how do we identify it. Then we're going to talk about how to actually combat career anxiety with different sort of resources, tools, and strategies. Then I'm going to end with some practical tools and resources around campus and elsewhere that you might not have heard of or not have utilized. And then again, we're going to end with that Q&A. The goal of this workshop is really to normalize career anxiety and manage expectations about the career journey so that you all are set up for success post-graduation or, even just in this next year as you're doing some job and internship searching. All right. So firstly, in terms of career anxiety for this presentation, we are talking about the state of anxiety, which is a feeling of nervousness or unease, typically about an imminent event or something with an uncertain outcome. So this is not necessarily the anxiety in the mental health sense or mental illness sense, but of course, mental illness can coexist with and amplify general career anxiety. And it's important to kind of disentangle that and see if that's something that you really also want to sort of acknowledge and treat in part of your career journey. And so career anxiety then is just defined as, anxiety around choosing, obtaining, starting, or changing careers. And it's often experienced approaching or after graduation, and it's related to what's often referenced as post-grad blues or quarter life crisis. And so, you can experience career anxiety at any point or age, but graduation, if you think about it, while it's a huge, exciting achievement, moving into adulthood and all of that unknown territory after being in an educational system for, on average 16 years, is going to feel disorienting and alienating for a lot of folks. And so just expect that, might be the case for you, and that's totally normal. Your sense of structure in your community, your senses of purpose, predictability, all of that might have to sort of settle back into place. And so again, we're going to talk about how to really reflect on this feeling, this phenomenon, and sort of deal with it. And so emotionally, in identifying whether this is something you're experiencing, if you check in with yourself, you might notice that you're just feeling really stressed and overwhelmed about all of the moving pieces. You might also feel ambivalence or a lack of motivation to do things. Both are totally common, totally normal. Mentally, you might have thought patterns around worst case scenarios or what ifs, or you might just be really self-critical and hard on yourself. And physiologically or in your body, you might have muscle tension, sleep problems. Right after I graduated, I had to get a night guard for the first time to protect my teeth and my jaws from grinding. So even if during the day I was kind of just go, 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 or I was maybe avoiding, at night, my body just kind of took over and was telling me that I was really stressed. So again, it's really important to pay attention to these signs because really identifying is the first step towards managing. So there are a lot of things that give life to career anxiety or perpetuate it, and I invite you to reflect on which of these might apply in your life. The first being internalized messages about success and failure. For example, in order to prove myself, I must work for a company like Amazon or Google and make a salary above X amount. I think that when we try so hard to control the future, we can get caught in analysis paralysis, where we're overwhelmed by making the right choices and then are unable to really make choices at all. And, some fear and pressure is practical and it's valid, but I'm really just sort of discussing the stereotypes and comparison and elitism that often comes within the culture of the UW campus. Family expectations, especially for students from marginalized or underrepresented backgrounds. So for example, being a first-gen student and having parents that might think that a degree automatically leads to a job, or coming from an immigrant family where there might be pressure to represent or financially support them. This is something that a lot of people in my community, experienced throughout college, and it certainly compounds the stress of an already stressful time of life. So another one is comparison to peers or popular media. So we live in a culture where myths of meritocracy and individualism are so deeply embedded that you might really only hear about success stories, especially with the way that we curate our images on social media. And then also in, movies and TV, often the sort of ambiguity and non-fun, non-glamorous parts of college and the job search are not accurately captured. And so we're just kind of at a loss when we feel that all of a sudden we're not sure what to do or how we got here. And then finally, a lack of control and certainty just at large. As I've already talked about, many of you have been in an educational system for many, many years where your job was to be a student. And even if you haven't loved that job, the system is still relatively predictable, it's structured, you're always working towards that next test, that next quarter, the next year, you're on track with your advisor or trying to stay on track with what your advisor has told you to do. Being outside of this system can feel really uncomfortable because instead of showing up to class, where professors are there to teach you or advisors are there to help you, you might be at home, in front of your computer, just waiting to hear back from employers. And that can certainly feel like a power shift. And so I just wanted to call out these different sort of sources of career anxiety. And if anyone is, wanting to share which of these four maybe are most resonant or pertinent for you in the chat, I always kind of like to see that. So I'll give a couple seconds if anyone wants to just call out or name any of these. Okay, seems like we have a pretty quiet group today. And that's okay. Like no one is required to share here. But yeah, in other presentations, it's been kind of cool to see how everyone has been able to sort of relate with each other. And I think that's where a lot of the power in managing comes in, is through having transparent discussion with each other. So I'm not going to force that here, but again, I just continually invite you to reflect on where these your anxiety is stemming from. And so moving into combating career anxiety, really there are three main buckets I want to discuss today. The first is setting, realistic expectations, because, ultimately, a lot of the anxiety happens when you feel that reality doesn't match what you were told or what you were hoping for. And there are so many narratives, again, like I said, about what's good and bad, or what we should or shouldn't do or want. So we're going to debunk some myths today. We're also going to talk about actively developing a resilient mindset and nurturing well-being to help stabilize ourselves. And so, if you think about it, what good is worrying about charting your course or your career if your ship, aka you, is broken down? So we have to really focus on getting ourselves in the right sort of headspace. And then finally, good old planning and preparation can certainly equip us with a sense of control, even if so many things are out of our control. And so to continue the ship metaphor, if you want to set sail, you're going to need a compass, right? So we'll talk about specific assessments and actions that you can take to find that direction. So starting with managing expectations, I'm going to go through 8 career myths that I often hear in my office as a career coach, and that I often heard as a UW student when I was a UW student. So the first is that there's one perfect job for me. In reality, people are multidimensional. We are changing creatures over time, over the courses of our lives. And on average, data shows that people hold 12 jobs in their lifetime. And I think that number is ever increasing. Long gone are the days where one would graduate college, go to a company, work there for 60 years or 50 years, and then retire. If that, is the reality for you, that's awesome. If that's what you like and what gives you satisfaction, or is going to be what makes sense for your life, but it's really not the requirement, nor is it the expectation these days. And in my short career of 5 years past college, I've already worked in 3 different industries altogether, and it wasn't an easy process, but it was a necessary one for me. So it's so possible to have multiple jobs that work for you. 2, I can't be hired outside my major. Truly here, there's no one-to-one correlation between majors and jobs. Most employers these days focus on the skills that you have, especially those hard or technical skills, and your experiences, not just internships, but volunteer work, leadership in clubs, projects, rather than just your educational major. For example, the CEO of HP, technology, studied medieval studies as their major. 3, it's too late to change careers, or I'll waste my skills. Again, on average, people change careers or industries 3 to 5 times in their lifetime. Skills, once again, are the focus here. They're actually transferable between different types of jobs. It's not just one skill for one job. And also a unique or different background from the average background in a given industry isn't necessarily a weakness. It's something that you can leverage to set you apart, as long as you're able to really feel confident and grounded in that. 4, my first job decides the rest of my career. There's so much anticipation and buildup to graduation, and everyone's asking you what you're going to do after college. But in reality, what you do after college doesn't dictate what you're going to do in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. Certainly your first job does matter, but it doesn't have to check all of your boxes in order to have a secure future. Over 50% of recent graduates leave their first job within a year these days. And that is so different from how it was even when I graduated, and there was a stigma against that. So growth really happens in all directions and not just by staying at one company and growing vertically up one job ladder. 4 more here. So I need to follow my passion. This one, while it's often said with good intention, can be can instill a lot of pressure as well on students, because not everyone has one passion or has identified a passion, and even if you do, you don't have to monetize it, right? There's no fixed route to happiness, and research has shown that regardless of the what, it's really senses of competence, autonomy, purpose, and relatedness that matter the most in having a happy life. So if you can sort of cultivate those things in your job and outside of your job in your personal life, that's really the goal. Salary is the indicator of success. So of course, salary is important, right? Especially in an area with a high cost of living. But it doesn't indicate how successful you are or how important your contributions are. There are so many jobs that are so important to the world and, pretty underpaid. I'm thinking of often our educators and our helping professions, our social workers and our therapists. And so don't use salary to define your importance to yourself or to other people, and know that success is a relative term that everyone has different definitions of. And so try to figure out what your own definition of success is. 7, it's embarrassing to live at home after college. I don't know if people feel this way often. It's becoming really, really common and a really sort of wise financial decision if you can afford that and if you have a family that you feel safe living with. But yeah, I would say 20 years ago, this was not common. The market has changed, right? Different things have changed. And these days, about a third of US graduates do move back home. And if we look at other cultures, outside the United States, this has really been the norm for a lot of other cultures for a long time. Number 8 is, if I'm not hearing back, something is wrong with me. So this one is so hard to sort of combat. I think this is something that I have still felt late in my career, even when I know this isn't the case, because you just get stuck in this tunnel vision mindset where, again, right, like it can take many, many applications to even get one interview. And that is just really normal, even for really talented, really qualified applicants. On average, it takes 3 to 6 months to actually land a job. For recent grads, it can take more when we've collected data. You might need to evaluate, your application materials, your resume, how many applications you're sending out. Are you networking? Yes, you might need to look at those strategies, but also the job search process is simply demanding. It's brutal. And, on my LinkedIn these days, all of the folks on my news feed are also kind of commiserating in that process and wondering how we can make it better. But yeah, I just encourage you to try to remind yourself that it's not personal. Okay, so how we can really truly combat those myths is by critical thinking and discovering what the truth really is, not just listening to one tweet or one story that your friend said and deciding that that's the fact, but looking at statistics, looking at projections, asking people for informational interviews to get knowledge from people who are actually in the field. And then, of course, gaining that experience yourself through volunteer or internship, etc. All of these things will help you investigate before deciding on a direction. If we decide too quickly without taking that time to investigate for ourselves, then we're going to cross a lot of things off our list that maybe would have been good or maybe would have been okay with us. So again, really the sort of theme of this presentation is to really reconcile with yourself. What are your own definitions of success? What are the things that you value? What are your interests? Okay, so moving on to our second bucket of cultivating well-being and developing a resilient mindset. I'm going to sort of talk about this through the lens of growth mindset, which probably some of you are familiar with. But a growth mindset is something that a lot of employers look for, and it's something that will really help you navigate the stress of a really ambiguous job search. And so think about yourself and how much you practice maybe more of a growth mindset or a fixed mindset in any given day or when things get tough. So on the left, growth mindset is defined as valuing a process rather than just the outcomes of the process. And a fixed mindset just values the outcome, just values the grade, just values the salary, just values whether they got the job or didn't get the job. A growth mindset really understands that there is something gained in every experience, even if it's not the outcome that you wanted, and kind of trusts that process. A growth mindset also believes skills can be developed over time rather than thinking I'm just good at this or I'm bad at this, and that's just how it's going to be. Certainly, all of us have different gifts and aptitudes, but it doesn't mean that we are not able to learn things that don't come supernaturally to us if that's what we really care to do. A growth mindset views feedback as a tool for learning rather than as personal criticism. This is something that is really hard in practice, but truly, I think if you can get to a stage where you go out of your way to solicit feedback from folks that you trust, that's one of the sort of quickest and most strong vehicles for growth in all sorts of all dimensions of your life. Finally, a growth mindset is inspired by others' success rather than threatened by others' success. Also, something that's difficult, I understand, when you're maybe at the UW surrounded by really smart, talented folks who are all doing different things, and there might be a culture of competition in your major. But truly, success and life, it's not a zero-sum game where one person wins and that means someone else has to lose. We can all win, we can all lift each other up. That's really what the goal of networking is. And so taking the mindset of what can I learn from someone else's success? What can I learn from someone else's journey? And how can I apply that to my life? That will really give you winning results. So some more words to differentiate the two to, again, reflect on how much of a growth mindset you feel you've been able to develop. So thinking, am I flexible in my thinking or am I inflexible? Am I nuanced or am I black and white? Do I trust in, the greater process, in myself, or am I making decisions out of fear and comparison? So again, all of this is so important in managing career anxiety. So I have an activity here, and I know we have a quiet group, but I'm going to put it out there. So just to see if we're all kind of getting what I'm putting down with the growth mindset. So this first scenario, I've had 3 interviews, but have never received an offer. Let's say this is what you're facing. Can someone in the chat just give an example of someone with a fixed mindset? What would they think or conclude about this scenario? Perfect. Okay. I'm not qualified or capable of receiving an offer. Exactly. That is a fixed mindset. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. Exactly. The fixed mindset internalizes what's happening as a fault of their own, right? They don't externalize it to say, maybe this process is difficult, but I can still keep going. It's, I'm not good enough. An immediate conclusion. A growth mindset, if anyone wants to, take a crack at that, what would a growth mindset instead reframe this as? Any takers? What would a growth mindset? Okay, perfect. I need to develop a skill set as per the changing needs and demand of the work. Exactly. Exactly, right. The world is a changing and it is what it is. And I'm also changing and I can develop those skill sets, right? I can also change. I can think about what is within my power and to do. So yeah, I like that. Another sort of growth mindset approach could be, um, 3 interviews. In those 3 interviews, I've not received an offer, but I did get to the interview stage, which means something went right. And I should be proud of getting there. And also in those interviews, that process itself was valuable. I gained skills in that process, and all of those things become part of my character and help me in future interviews. So it's not wasted time. And of course, you know, um, 3 interview or not having offers from 3 different companies is not enough for us to really make any sort of conclusion yet. Okay, so the second one for time, I'll just go ahead and kind of run through myself. So the scenario is my dream company paused hiring due to market factors, which is unfortunately sort of a timely example given some of the layoffs in especially tech these days. A fixed mindset would just say, I'll never be able to work at my dream company, right? The words never or always tend to sometimes signify a fixed mindset. It might be just yeah, that is kind of the main fixed mindset or that I've heard is just kind of giving up and just saying it, it's black or white. It's not going to happen. I have to start all over. Everything I've been working for is wasted. But a growth mindset understands, kind of like the example that was just given in the chat, that things are out of our control, things change, but what we do have, our skills, our experiences are transferable to so many different things. And there are so many opportunities out there that would be wonderful opportunities and matches for us if we just opened up our mind to think outside of, that one outcome we were shooting for. And it doesn't mean you have to give up on that dream company. Perhaps they will hire again in the future and you can reapply to them at a higher level when you've gained more experience. But it's really having that flexibility and mindset that I really want to promote here. Okay, and so as for the well-being side of things, not just the resilient mindset, but also taking care of ourselves or self-care, I want to talk about just a few general tips during the job search process. So one, remember to diversify your activities and, hang out with your friends, do your hobbies, take breaks, and know you are not your job. You are a multidimensional person. I think that if we get so sucked into this process, that's really where it's hard for us to challenge those negative thoughts when things aren't happening. Trust yourself. Again, comparison is the thief of joy. If you can remember your path, your path is your own. Everyone's timeline looks different and that's okay. That will be monumental. Curate the content that you consume. So as for social media, you know yourself, you know when things are not productive or helpful for you. And if you need to take a break or deactivate an account, even if it's LinkedIn for a moment in time, because it's just getting to your mental, then, do that, take charge of that. Celebrate small victories. So as I said before, let's say you got to the interview, you didn't get that second interview, or you didn't get the job. It's not a failure, right? You still had so many wins along the way. Even just submitting jobs takes a lot of time and energy, and you should celebrate that work too. Finally, reach out to other people who you trust, whether they're your friends, professors, mentors, people who've been in your shoes. It'll help place your situation in a larger context and remind you that you're not the only one going through this. Other people have gone before you and have succeeded. And that will give you, hope when things are feeling perhaps despairing or hopeless. Okay, so the last bucket is on planning and preparation. And I, again, just have some general tips, words of wisdom here. And so with career planning, one thing that's really important to do is to identify what you value, what I've said a couple times now in this presentation. You can do this by taking the assessment pathway U, which is on our website. And again, I'll send a follow-up email, but this measures your interests and values and gives you career matches based on that, which has been really helpful for some students. Gen Studies 297 is a 1-credit seminar offered winter quarter and next quarter in the spring. So if you're still looking for a 1 credit or interested in that, it talks about career exploration and planning, identifying those values. RSOs or clubs is a great place for you to meet like-minded or not like-minded people, for you to engage in important dialogue and activity to really develop your sense of self and your values. Same thing with volunteering. Giving back to other people, and even just working in different industries, just for the experience can help you understand what it is you really like and don't like. Creating your own structure is really important. So everyone has different times of day that they're most productive. So I, encourage you to think about that and plan accordingly so you set yourself up for success. Also, try to map out some goals for yourself. SMART goals are things you probably learned about in high school, maybe in college, but that's an acronym for helping develop a goal that is really specific and something that can really hold you accountable, because there's certain, timelines and numbers associated with it. And so, for example, with a SMART goal, it might be like, I want to apply to this many jobs per week or per day. And you have to kind of figure out what's manageable for you, given everything else going on in your life. Casting a wide net. So being consistent and also open-minded in the networking process is truly crucial, right? We know over 80% of people say that networking or relationships directly helped them find their current position. And that's just sort of a consistent number across the board year after year. So whether it's, when you're in the job search, being open-minded about different companies that maybe you didn't consider before, and just even using those companies as interview practice if you don't want to work there, and just seeing what happens, or it's actively going on LinkedIn and reaching out to people in different fields that you are interested in talking to whom you don't know. Yeah, that's a huge sort of tip for you. And then documenting your progress along the way. So let's say you're working a job or an internship right now, keeping a journal of the things that you like about that job, you don't like, the times that things didn't go well or did go well. All of that's going to help you solidify your understanding of what you'd like to do next. And in your next interview, it'll be easier for you to tell stories about what you've done in the past because you have notes. But again, looking at a list of all the things you've achieved, even quarter to quarter between different classes, say you have different projects you really are proud of, it's helpful for us to stop and reflect on that. Okay, so we're nearing the end of the presentation, and I just want to share some tools and resources that you may or may not know about. Obviously some, Handshake, Pathway U, I mentioned. Mary Gates Hall is where career coaches are located for one-on-one appointments or drop-in advising. But all of these other ones here, an interview prep tool, LinkedIn Learning, which is where you can learn a lot of technical skills that maybe you're not learning in class, but you need to learn for a job. All of these things are on our website and are really intended to help students along the way. So just wanted to let you know that these exist. And again, as I said in the beginning, if you feel that it goes deeper than just career anxiety and you want to consider what types of mental health resources are available, certainly there is campus counseling in Schmitz Hall. I've heard varying experiences with it, but it could be a good free place to start, if not to find referrals to other places off campus. Open Counseling and Open Path and Psychology Today are all databases of therapists in the area who all might specialize in different things, but these two in particular are sliding scale, so they might offer more affordable options, especially for students. And then Headspace, I just wanted to say we have a discount as UW members. So if you're interested in an app like that and haven't yet downloaded it, consider that. But yeah, that brings me to the end of today's presentation. Thanks all for sticking around and being part of the discussion. And hopefully you're able to take something away from this. And just again, know that our office is open if you would like to talk more one-on-one. I'll be around for the next few minutes if anyone has questions, but if not, feel free to head out and have a really good weekend. I will send a follow-up email from Handshake by the end of the day.